Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing? What's up, Trail Dust? First in, Shane Lalonde. Mr. Pines, how you doing? John Brunell. Ortegov. What is up, everybody? What is up? Good morning and welcome to 2023. I know we did our New Year's show. I'm still recovering. I'm so sore. Um, so uh, Firstly, I'd like to say how's everybody doing, and glad y'all are here. As we wait for people to filter in, I suppose we can begin with our traditional. How was your weeks and whatnot? What you've been doing? What you've been. Um, yeah, uh, just reading through the chat a little bit. But yeah, how was your week? Who wants to go first? All right, I'll pick. Adam, how was your week? Unmute your mic.
My week was actually fairly good. I was just trying to get rid of a whole heap, and I opened up YouTube and just had a whole heap of notifications pop up. I was quickly trying to get rid of them. Nothing worth it. Ding, 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 ding. My week was really good. It on Friday, it finally stopped raining. We've had pretty much constant rain here since the week before Christmas. We had Christmas Day, it didn't rain, of course, but I was off seeing family. But it's been basically it's been 3 straight weeks of near on constant rain. We've had just shy of a meter or 3 foot of water this month in the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So we've had a hell of a lot of water come down. So yeah, that stopped Friday. So I haven't really been able to do anything since this last couple of weeks, but my lawns were up to my thigh. So that's about a foot and a half. That's how long the grass was in my lawn. So I spent Friday mowing and getting everything ready, and then today I put together a chook pen for my lovely wife, so we can get some chickens and slowly getting things set up for the homestead, and planted a few more fruit trees out the back. Other than that, just recovering from New Year's. Yeah, trying to chill out, and yeah, haven't really been my driveway's held up really well this year, except for one maybe probably about 8 meter section. So that's 24-foot stretch, which is just now a soup again. So yeah, basically it's this time of year for me is challenging, simply because the sheer amount of water that we have over this time of year. We haven't had a cyclone yet, which is good, but yeah, so it's basically just been struggling against the elements. I mean, for those of you in the far northern part of the US and in Canada and stuff like that, it's like it's like fighting snow. Snow's, as far as I've never really had to deal with it, but it's a constant battle of you're cleaning up your paths and making sure nothing's slippery and all that type of stuff. Because of the sheer amount of water that we get and the temperatures here, it's fighting against the weather, making sure nothing's flooding. We can't hang stuff up wet. We have to put them in the tumble dryer because everything goes moldy at this time of year if it stays wet for too long. We get practically it's 4 to 6 months of just wet weather. And I mean, the rain's warm, but at the end of the day, it's still, when you have that sheer volume of water, it starts to affect. You can't go places because they're flooded. So like for example, last week I nearly wasn't able to go to work because where I live, there's one way there's 2 creek crossings, and another way there's about 5. And on one particular day, all 5 creek crossings were over the road, and with the sheer volume of water that we get here, there's a saying: if it's flooded, forget it, because it might look like it's gentle, but there's quite a current going over those roads. So you start to drive through, and there were actually at one of the crossings that I went over, there was a car actually washed off the road. So yeah, so it's one of the things that it's a battle, but I wouldn't live anywhere else. I like the warmth. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's been my week in a nutshell. Putting in more gardens, trying to get my lawns down on a manageable level. Luckily, everything's mowed now, so I've got another couple of weeks before I have to worry about it again. But it's terrifying watching your yard turning into it's literally turning into a jungle before your eyes over the course of a couple of weeks.
Right. We deal with that here too, but we have lawnmower technology.
I have a ride-on mower, but seriously, when it's that wet, I nearly bogged. Okay, so everyone knows what a ride-on mower looks like. I nearly bogged a ride-on mower. It's that wet.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just
get goats. Get goats.
There you go.
I'm actually looking at once I get my property fenced, I'm actually looking at getting. So there is a breed of sheep that works that survives really well in the tropics. Most sheep don't actually do too well in the tropics. It gets too hot from stuff like that. But I know some people up here that have a breed. Basically, it's an African meat sheep. It's not for wool. They keep it for meat and stuff like that. And I know a couple of people up here that have small herds of them. So I'm actually looking at either looking into getting a couple of beef cows, a couple of goats, or a couple of African meat sheep. There is a specific name for them. I can't remember them at the moment, but yeah, because they do really well in the tropics. And like goats, they eat just about everything. I'm looking to get some of them. But see, half the problem is when you live in natural bush in Northern Australia, we have these trees that are called ironwood trees. Now, it's exactly how it sounds. These trees are so tough, they will send chainsaws blunt whilst you're trying to cut them, and that's unseasoned. They are so hard that they're like cutting through iron, and they're also highly toxic to everything. You try and if anything tries to eat, particularly the small, and they don't seed, they shoot off. So you have roots, and then another they'll shoot off through the roots, and another tree will grow. So yeah, so when animals come in and eat the leaves and eat the small shoots and stuff like that, it kills them. So they're toxic. So that's half the problem of living out bush. So yeah, when I get these and they even know to knock over goats, and everyone knows how hard it is to kill a goat with with what they're eating. So yeah, so when it comes down to it, I've got to be careful and go through and make sure none of the ironwoods are shooting on my property before I can get them.
I was gonna say, I mean, like, it's well known that a goat can digest an aluminum can. So
there's more proof that everything in Australia is trying to kill you. You know. From the flora to the fauna to the, even the words there. The word Australia means die. Die, mother. No, man. I'm just kidding. All right. All right. Before we get canceled by an entire continent, Alex, how you doing?
Oh, I am doing fantastic. Let's see, worked just a little bit. I mean, I guess I don't know exactly, maybe got 50 hours this week. I don't know. But I worked Thursday a night shift, and then I didn't get a dispatch for Friday. I walked into the office Thursday morning, and the boss says, yeah, you'll either be day shift on Saturday or night shift on Sunday. Well, here it is Sunday, and I'm at home, and I still haven't gotten a dispatch. So I don't know when I'm going back to work. I have to go back today because I'm out of medication. But I called my daughter, or I texted my daughter at about 2:30 in the morning, Friday morning, and said, hey, when you wake up, come pick me up in Midland, because she's had my truck for a month because when she wrecked her car. And I said, come pick me up and we'll go get you a car. And so Friday, she had shit to do, I guess. And so she wound up picking me up at like 2:00 in the afternoon on Friday, drove to Abilene, started working a car deal, and then came home, and then went back yesterday and finished the car deal. And we got in with her car probably about 6:00 last night. Wound up picking her up a 2017 Volkswagen Passat. And yeah, nice little car. I had an 04 Passat, so I'm familiar with the maintenance and everything on one of those. And yeah, I think I got like 280,000 miles out of mine before it broke the timing belt. And honestly, it broke the timing belt because the valve cover gaskets leaked on it, and it's a dry belt, so that was an issue. And when I had Volkswagen repair the timing belt or the valve cover gaskets, they're like, "Hey, man, it leaked on the timing belt. You could make it a mile. You could make it 10,000 miles. There's no telling." And I made it like, I don't know, 6 more months, and it broke on my way home. And I was like, well, and this car's toast. It costs more to fix than it's worth. So that's when I bought my Mercedes a few years back. Anyways, yeah, daughter's got a car. That means they get to take me pick up home today. I actually am not stuck at work without a ride anymore. And yeah, that's pretty much the entirety of my week.
Nice.
No, nothing exciting. Just
Well,
buying cars. I hate buying cars, but
yeah,
it's sometimes a necessity.
right. Yeah, I'm fairly soon. I hope to either get my truck fixed or get a new truck. It's not that I can drive it much anyway with the price of diesel,
Well,
but
I mean, you would think it's a Ford. I mean, like I swear, Yam, as you talk about it, like it's fixed or repaired daily.
well, the problem, it's all simple stuff. It's just I don't want to say the motivation to get it fixed. I need 2 new batteries, um, and then 4 new tires and a pitman arm. That's what I need. Once I get the pitman arm, then I can get it, get in alignment. It's not pain in the butt stuff. It's just, it's issues of it being an older vehicle.
Right. And honestly, I was in the same boat with the battery. Only I need one. And I mean, it's getting kind of weak, to the point where if I let it sit for 8 or 9 days, I got to get it jumped off.
That's what's happened. That's what's happened to mine.
I went to Harbor Freight and I bought like the $13 cigarette lighter plug-in solar battery maintainer thing. Haven't had an issue since. I mean, it's like it fires right up ever since. It puts just enough juice into it with that little solar panel that keeps the battery topped off. So I might have bought myself another 6 months before I got to replace the battery.
That might be my solution, because here's the thing. Like, all right, so I drive my truck about once a week. Every Saturday I take it to go out and do my Saturday things. And for the past month or so, I've had to jump it every time. It just it drains within. I mean, alternator I changed maybe a year ago. Batteries maybe 6 months before that. And so everything's new-ish. Nothing should be bad, but
no, it'd be a battery. It would near on definitely be a battery, because batteries are only designed to last about 18 months to 2 years at most.
I always heard 5 years. But
most of them only have a 2-year warranty nowadays, so I double check it.
No, my battery's got a 5-year warranty. I mean, like, I don't think I've had a battery with less than a 5-year warranty in 2 decades. And then you get like an Optima, which has got like a 7 to 10-year warranty. So, but those batteries are like $300. So.
Yeah, so it might be my batteries, but it also might be an easy temporary solution, is a solar charger.
However, if you get the $100 battery from Walmart, that is a 2-year battery.
That's probably what I got. I probably got the $100 batteries from AutoZone.
Right, the Duralast.
Yeah, but either way, that's a current issue that I'm dealing with, and a solar charger might do that, because once I jump it, it's fine.
See, now we have the infinite mirror thing going right here.
Yeah. But but yeah, so that's one thing that I've been dealing with ongoing. I had some people over, if you remember, when I had Corgi Forge come by, Corgi Forge and Three Crows Forge. Daniel actually came by again and helped me with a chainsaw to work on clearing that lot. I'm sure some of you have seen some of the pictures, but yeah, I probably moved about 3,000 pounds of wood. I've got a pile that I need to split now, and just a little bit more to clear. And yeah, so Been working on that. Um,
You know, I can't. I mean, we've got this far into it, and I still can't believe you still haven't brought up the second visitor to the second squad member to show up at Island Metal Forge.
I
So,
was getting to that.
oh, okay.
Nice segue. And speaking of which, yes, I had Bob the Builder. I mean, Bob from B&B B&B Forge. Bob Bob and Little B. Bob and his son James came by, and I didn't mention it on our New Year's show because I was out of it, but we had a lot to talk about. Yeah, he came by New Year's Eve, and we had a blast. I'm talking a blast. Forged a bunch of stuff. Let the kid practice on making some railroad spike knives and work with his first time with leaf springs. So it was a lot of fun. Good morning, everybody that's showing up. But yeah, so I'm back at work, and for some reason, I've got either a pinched nerve or a pulled muscle in my shoulder, in my left shoulder. So we'll see how tonight goes with that. I've got a tiny, teeny, tiny 6-ounce hammer to work on tonight. But yeah. So,
I did remember one more really exciting thing that happened to me last week. So, and it's actually it's got to do with the book and stuff like that. So, so for those of you that don't know, my next major project beyond finishing up Practical Blacksmithing is actually a completely new book that's going to be called A Practical Blacksmith Companion. So it's basically it's another book, kind of like Practical Blacksmithing, but with a whole heap of stuff that most guys have never read. Now, in that book, in my research, I came across a section that talked about how the rosettes were made on the Horton Court Palace gates, the Lions gates in the UK, how the rosettes on their iron gates were actually made. Now, of course, you can't just go get a picture of them because they belong to the historical palaces in the UK. So I've been in contact with Historical Palaces UK, and I've got tentative permission to get photos to actually go with that written account of how. And this was written, I believe, by a guy that apprenticed to the guy that made the gates. So it talks about how to make special tongs to make rosettes and all that type of stuff. So it's really, really exciting. So I've been in contact with Historical Palaces UK, trying to get permission to get some photos and use them in the next book. So that I was going to say that was the other exciting bit of information that I had. So hopefully I can get those photos. Of course, my brother lives in the UK, so he'll be actually going to Horton Palace. And they have some, I mean, if you go on Google Maps and look around some of the fences of these historical palaces, some of the Baroque ironwork, I'm sure Roy would have a wonderful time searching Google Earth. The acanthus leaves and the lily work and the rose work, and it is just jaw-dropping. Some of the work that I've seen just walking around the palace, the external of the palace with Google Maps. So yeah, so if you have a chance to do that, guys, remember, sometimes a resource like Google Maps can be really cool. One thing I'm going to be doing this week is taking a stroll through the French Quarter of New Orleans to have a look at some of the old ironwork there. So that's another way you guys can get a bit of inspiration on something to do, because I realize we've got this tool where we can get the street level, look at all this cool ironwork, and how many of us actually do it.
Right.
I have actually toured the pyramids of Giza from Google Earth. So
yeah, I'm gonna have to play with that with our upcoming seasons, and
right?
not to segue into that, but as those of you who attended our first episode of this year, our January 1st stream, it was a nice segue. Uh, the topics that we're going to be going over this year, and we're not doing it every single show, but I believe we decided we're doing twice a month. Ancient civilization metalworking and ancient civilization stuff. And in our meeting that we had earlier this week, we've kind of decided that there's so much to go over because, I mean, human history, huh? Right? This will probably be, something that goes on for a couple of years. So fun. I'm gonna be so smart. I'm gonna be big brain.
Yeah, and it's like oh, when we initially thought about it, it's like, oh well, this won't be too bad. We can just we can get a couple shows out of this, and then we start doing research, and it's like,
let me just put it this way. My brain
there's so
hurts.
much material.
My brain.
Deep mine shafts that we've fallen down in this research. Deep mine shafts.
Speaking of mine shafts, that's going to be something that I go into in the next episode of this. This is the rise of Rome. When we discuss the fall of Rome, the late Roman Empire. It's like in the Britannia aspect that I was looking at, the mining aspects, and holy cow, that's a rabbit hole, mine hole, whatever. Yeah, these two are so much better at research than me. I just got, jokes. I just got penile humor.
Right.
So today, our topic today is the rise of Rome, rather the ancient metallurgy or the ancient art of working metal during the rise of Rome, and that's we defined that period for our research purposes as, I believe, 700 BC to 100 BC, which coincidentally, 100 BC was the birth year of one Julius Caesar, the inventor of the Caesar salad. And but but yeah, so we are going to be just delving into, each of us picked a topic to look into. Rather, we said, all right, everybody pick a topic and look into it. And coincidentally and thankfully, we each on our own picked something a little bit different, but all tying in together. So
I'm going to kick it off because my point of research went all the way back to the beginning. So I'm going to talk about the start of Rome. So the rise of Roman Empire can be traced right back to Italy in the 8th century BC. So basically 756 is the accepted founding date for Rome as it came to be known. This was a period of cultural change when the simple way of life of the peoples of central Italy was beginning to be affected by new influences from the eastern Mediterranean. This was also a period basically in middle to the end of the Bronze Age collapse, start of the Iron Age. So in central Italy, there was a plain on the west coast called Latinum, which takes its name from the Latin people who lived there in the first millennium BCE. They came down to Italy from the north, like other Italic peoples, and settled in small villages and thatched huts sometime in the second millennium. Rome was probably originally a collection of small farming settlements. Now, this is also supported by archaeological finds. For example, I believe his name was Otis the Iceman, that were found in the Italian Alps dated to around the second millennium BCE. So 2,000 years before the end of about 1,500 years before the start of the Roman Empire. And he at the time was found with a copper knife, bows and arrows, and iron-tipped arrows. So this was during the peak of the Bronze Age, they were still using arrows, and they believed that during the collapse of that people migrated to the Italian peninsula during Bronze Age collapse. So with over a long period of time, but people were moving from the mainland Europe towards the peninsula and stuff like that. So the mythology that states that the founding of Rome that goes back to the time of the Trojan War. So Troy was razed, but Aeneas, a hero of Troy, escaped with some of the riches of Troy and a group of refugees. Aeneas and the refugees wandered the Mediterranean until they finally settled in central Italy. Here, Aeneas married the princess of an Italian king. As time passed, Romulus and Remus, twins and descendants of this marriage, whom were most definitely Etruscan, co-founded Rome. In an argument, Romulus ended up killing his brother Remus and became the first king. Another version says that Romulus and Remus were purported to be sons of Rhea Silvia and either Mars, the god of war, or the demigod hero Hercules or Heracles in the Greek tradition. They were abandoned at birth in a matter of many mythological heroes, be it because of a prophecy and that they would eventually overthrow their great uncle Amulius and had overthrown Silvia's father Numitor. The twins were abandoned on the river Tiber by servants who took pity on the infant, and despite their orders, the twins were nurtured by a she-wolf until a shepherd named Faustulus found the boys and took them as his sons. Faustus and his wife Acca Larentina raised the children, and when Remus and Romulus became adults, they killed Amulius and restored Numitor. They decided to establish a city each. Each took auspices, being signs from the natural world at the time, and quarreled over the result. Romulus and his followers began to establish city walls on his favorite hill, the Palatine, and Remus, who wanted to found a city on Aventine Hill. So there's actually 7 hills in Rome, and these were the 2 main ones. Eventually the valley between them would actually become the Roman Square, where a lot of historical events happened. But yeah, in the commonest version, according to Livy, Remus slighted Romulus by leaping Romulus's wall by leaping over it, and was killed either by his twin or their followers. Either way, in the 8th century BCE, the rural way of life began to be affected by influences coming from outside. Greek colonies were established in the plain of Campania, just south of the valley of the plain of Latinum, and they introduced a new way of life based on towns and trade. Within a century or so of their coming, they had also brought such innovations as the alphabet and coinage to the Italian peoples, amongst whom they lived and traded. Meanwhile, to the north of Latins, another civilization rose, that of the Etruscans. Well, the Etruscans had actually already existed for a fair amount of time before the development of Rome. They developed an advanced material culture like that of the Greeks, and owed a great deal to the contacts in the Eastern Mediterranean and Near East. They too lived in towns and cities rather than in small villages, and developed a sophisticated urban culture, which is still able to be viewed in Roman culture today. They had close commercial contacts with the Greeks, Carthaginians, and other civilized people of the regions. The Etruscans elite provided Rome with its early political arrangements, monarchy and army, and urban infrastructure, walls, forum, drainage system, etc. In short, it was probably they who turned Rome into the full-blown city-state that we know today. So of the 7 original first kings of Rome, being Romulus, and then there were 6 more after that, at least 4 of them were definitely Etruscan. One was Sarmatian, which is to the east, I believe, to the east of the Latin plains, and one was actually probably Latin. So, though you may not have heard of the Etruscans, we've actually talked about the Etruscans previously on the show, being some of the first metal workers with history of large-scale metalwork in the Mediterranean. Large-scale ironwork. The Etruscans were considered one of the first superpowers of the Western Mediterranean, who alongside the Greeks developed the earliest true cities in Europe. They were so successful, in fact, that most important cities in modern Tuscany, being Florence, Pisa, Siena, etc., were first established by the Etruscans before Rome was established, and have been continuously inhabited since then. Etruscans' influence on ancient Roman culture was profound, and it was from the Etruscans that the Romans inherit many of their own cultural and artistic traditions, from the spectacle of gladiatorial combat to hydraulic engineering, temple design, religious ritual, and many other things. In fact, hundreds of years after the Etruscans had been conquered by the Romans and absorbed into their empire, the Romans still maintained an Etruscan priesthood in Rome, which they thought necessary to consult when under attack from the invading barbarians. Few Etruscan words actually ended up entering the English language, and by extent entering our modern language. But those that did tend to do with state authority, such as toga palamata, a magistrate's robe, cella curulus, which being the magistrate's chair, the faces or feces, a bundle of whipping rods surrounded by a double-bladed axe carried by a magistrate and attendants, lictorus, or what the judges eventually evolved into a judge's gavel. And also the word populace, which is a Etruscan derivation and originally referred to the people assembled for war, as in an army. So populace originally referred to the word for an army, which eventually turned into general populace. The early Romans were deeply influenced by more than civilized by their more civilized Etruscan rulers, whose imprint can be seen in Roman writing, arts and architecture, religion, military matters, and entertainment, and probably a host of other aspects in life, in thus helping to shape Roman civilization and later our own culture. Now, down to the Pertin pit. So cities such as Populonia were known for their iron industry. Tarquinini for the production of bronze utensils, and source of economic strength lay in their control of mineral resources from the Tolfa Hills west of Lake Bracciano, northward to the Cottons and Metallurgy, the metal-bearing mountain chain of Tuscany, where ore deposits of copper, lead, iron, and tin were abundant. These cities became wealthy from the production of bronze, produced some of the finest metalsmiths on the Italian peninsula, who created bronze weapons, candelabra, household utensils, figurines, cauldrons, and iron eventually eclipsed bronze as the bountiful resource, with a seemingly inexhaustible supply of ore came primarily from the islands off Elba, now off the western coast of Italy. Ancient writers described that a multitude of furnitures that spewed clouds of heavy smoke into the Mediterranean heavens, and experts estimate that from the remaining slag heaps of Elba, that the coast of the Etruscans extracted and worked from 10 to 12,000 tons of ore every year for 400 years. So that is an industrial scale operation there. So in the Etruscan port of Populonia, there are traces of more than 500 mining shafts together with smelting furnaces, some dating back to the founding of Rome around 750 BC. So some posit that the Etruscans, Latins, and other were originally refugees that passed over the Italian Alps, and they think that the reason why bronze actually ended up being the primary mass-produced metal used at the time, besides the Bronze Age collapse being attributed to a lack of resource in tin, as well as a lot of other situations such as natural disasters. There was widespread earthquakes at the time, but also there was a large-scale famine that they believed to have been happening in Europe, across Europe at the time, due to some sort of climate change. There's records in the soils and stuff like that of a several degree rise in temperature in a short period of time, which caused droughts and basically famines. So at the time, well-worked bronze was considered superior to general iron, and well-worked bronze is when you compare it to modern-day iron and steel, bronze is probably a little bit inferior. But back at the early times of iron production, well-worked bronze was superior to iron. However, the abundance, when you compare the abundance of iron ore versus the abundance of tin, iron ore is going to win out most of the time. So during that stage, bronze weapons were generally of a higher quality than common iron weapons, but because of the less availability of tin, bronze weapons were utilized by nobles, royalty, pharaoh, but they were also used in stuff like mirrors and a lot of artistic things, which meant that as a consequence, bronze weapons were only used by the upper echelons, whereas the common foot soldier was not going to be able to possess bronze weapons as there were not enough around. So unlike tin, iron ore was readily available. So although inferior to bronze at the time, an army of hundreds of thousands could be much easily equipped with iron weapons and cheaper equipped with iron weapons. So the availability to produce large numbers of iron weapons overcame the advantages of bronze. And this is part of the reason why the Romans actually eventually ended up dominating most of the known world at the time, because they were able to mass produce weapons and armor as well as have a very structured military in order to be able to outperform, basically what was guerrilla or conscripted locals that didn't have a structured army for the nations that they ended up overtaking. But that's my contribution to this. This is that was the founding of Rome and the 7 kings of Rome. I didn't really go much into the 7 kings of Rome because basically it was just naming who they were. The very early parts of Rome, the Rome kingdoms, I wouldn't say not well documented, but they're not as well documented as they were moving into the time of the Republic of Rome and then the Roman Empire. We do know, however, that the Republic, the Roman Republic was actually ceded towards the end of the mid to end of the Roman kingdoms. I think it was the 5th kingdom of Rome. They actually had what was basically a legislature or a council of nobles, which decided who was going to become the king. And this is what eventually developed into the Senate after the last king of Rome. His son actually ended up sexually assaulting a lady or a very noble woman in the families of one of what would have been the legislator or senators at the time, which ended up into the Great Rebellion. And after they basically expelled, possibly may have done the old Julius Caesar to him. They
made a salad.
Yeah, basically. They swore at the time never to be under the rule of a king ever again. So from that period on, which was this, let me double check. I believe it was So after the So around 509 BC, so only 200 years after around 250 years after they first became the kingdoms of Rome, they became the Republic of Rome.
Mr. Jack Pine says, if I recall, the Roman Empire was a lot like the Borg. They incorporated technologies from all they conquered, calling it their own. So it wouldn't surprise me if Etruscan technology was claimed by Rome. Fair point.
Well, in all actuality, in a lot of these cases, Rome brought their technology to the places they conquered. In some cases, for instance, like the metalwork, the metal recovery coming out of what is now modern day Spain and Portugal. I mean, they were mining there prior to the Romans, but the Romans brought better techniques, so to speak, to the thing. It's like, look, you're now part of the empire. This is the way we want you to do it because it's better, it's faster, it's more efficient, and you're going to do it the way we want you to because we said so.
That coincides with that kind of reaffirms my research that I've done, in that while they may not have invented everything, they, for their time, perfected. They improved upon existing technologies with what they didn't come up with themselves. They improved upon, or they utilized the existing technologies of the time that may have been not utilized to its full potential for its time.
Mm.
So like lead work was common, but the Romans used it to pack and seal pipes that they would make, clay pipes that they would make to run water through the aqueducts. That wasn't done before Romans, even though lead work was not, uniquely Roman, before that.
Mm.
So like
Yeah.
they took existing technologies that other people would have and either incorporated it or improved upon it into new technologies. So
And
yes
and
and no.
people also have to remember. Yeah, people also have to remember that not only did they incorporate it, but they used it on such a wide scale that we still have it today, or we're trying to figure out how they did it back then.
Yeah.
So an example of that is from as early as around the fourth, the sixth, fifth, sixth century BC, which is around the time of the early Roman Republic. They had water wheels. They also had going into the fourth century BC. Then it's proven that they had trip hammers. They had water hammers that worked off a water wheel to go up and down and pound to pound wheat and to crush ore and all that type of thing. So it's not much of an extrapolation to say that they also use this technology in their metal working, in refining iron into wrought iron and stuff like that. So there's a lot of inventions that they had. They may have taken someone else and upscaled it. An example of that is again the aqueducts. Sure, using trenches to reroute water, reroute rivers for irrigation, that type of thing, wasn't something new. But the scale on which the Romans did it was unheard of prior to it.
Right.
Right. I mean, because they built the aqueducts, which they overhead, quite a ways with the arches and all that, and they went, hundreds of kilometers and brought water into Rome at a high enough level that you had water pressure in Rome, and basically it was the first city in the world to have indoor plumbing.
And sewage.
Yeah.
Yep. And that also to expand on that, they would dig through mountains to do this with such accuracy that modern day equipment has trouble like mimicking it. I think the longest mountainous through tunnel was 5 kilometers long, about that's 2 miles long. Right, it has over the course. I'm not. Was it you? No, it wasn't. I wasn't talking about you with this, Sally. It was during my research. But it's 5 kilometers or 2 miles long, and it has a grade of 1 meter every. 1 foot every 5,000 feet. So that's the angle of the drop over the course of this.
And I'd be willing to bet, just like in modern times, they didn't start at one end and work their way out. They started at both ends and met in the middle.
There's no, and also if you look, another thing is if you look at how these aqueducts were built, right? They are made of stones that are sometimes several hundred, 150, 160, 200 tons. Some of those stones. So they and they have on their pottery and some of their documents and stuff like that. They have what we would consider to be now primitive, but very advanced cranes. That wheel cranes and stuff like that to raise these big pieces of masonry. I mean, I can't think of it top of my head, but I think it's something like the tallest aqueduct is something like 120 meters tall. That is ridiculously high from the base of the valley up until.
I wouldn't go up there.
Yeah. So, Let me get into mine here.
Yeah.
It really, I kind of was planning on going first, and so I had an intro for the whole segment that is,
Sorry.
useless now, but that's all right because I'm going to read it anyways. And then Sully from the future is going to move shit around. So, so the Iron Age started kicking off around 500 BC, and of course, the Kingdom of Rome was founded in 753. So Rome was about 200 years old when the Iron Age really started coming into effect. So, but it was still technically the Bronze Age, solidly the Bronze Age, up until about 1 BC. At about that's about the dividing line where the kind of the metal of preference really. I mean, it's not like it was one day we're using bronze. Okay, tomorrow we're using iron. I mean, obviously this was about a 700-year shift in manufacturing and preference of metal. So this time period is considered to be the pre-Roman or Celtic Iron Age. However, the Roman Empire, founded in 73, was largely Bronze Age until 53 BC, which is where the influence of the Roman Empire kind of really shook things up, and the Roman Empire really impressed upon not necessarily Rome, but all of its territories and area, the importance of iron and shifting to iron production and iron working, because that's what the empire needed. The empire needed more iron. The empire needed more steel, and they had the ability to make steel back then. They knew if they heated iron in between in charcoal, that it would make a superior form of iron that was stronger, harder, better, faster. And so they could make steel. Even in the Bronze Age. Most of the recovered artifacts today are tools, weapons, jewelry, and coinage. The earliest metals used were pretty much the softer stuff, such as copper, gold, and lead. And while the technology used to extract pure copper existed, most metals existed as alloys. It's just like, this is what we got. Copper was really the only thing back then that they could really purify. I mean like, down like 99% copper. I mean, they were really good at purifying copper, and the rest of it was just a mix of this and mix of that. It's like, whatever we get out of the ore, right? The most important alloy of that was bronze. And by the height of the Roman Empire, the most commonly used metals included silver, zinc, iron, mercury, arsenic, antimony, lead, gold, copper, iron, and tin. That's a lot. And between these, many alloys were possible, and they adjusted the alloys accordingly to fit the specific needs that they needed. So, like if they're making cookware, they would use tin and lead to make pewter, because pewter made really good cookware, and it didn't impart a flavor onto the food like brass or bronze would. So they were able to use all these different metals that they knew of, which they could separate and make an alloy that was appropriate for this or appropriate for that accordingly. Like we were talking about, they used lead to seal the clay pipes in the aqueducts, which honestly probably had a lot to do with the downfall of Rome. More than you might think. Lead poisoning pretty much shortened the lives of the Roman. But later the Romans by a considerable amount. Now, the processes by which they used to extract these metals, like and these processes have been around since even before the founding of Rome. We're talking about melting, to heating up the ore to melt out the raw metals that are in there. Smelting, which is heating the metal in an oxygen rich environment to separate, or an oxygen free environment to separate out the different metals. Roasting, which is heating the ores in a oxygen rich environment to extract the sulfur and whatnot. All of the cupellation, which separates a single metal out of an alloy, like cupellating gold or silver, whatever. These things have been around since before the Roman Empire, so pre 700 BC. Well, these technologies were fairly accurate enough that they still used them, and consequently, I got to switch to my stuff here. Consequently, the processes that they used in Rome to do all this were so good that they were basically it's what made up the book De Re Metallica. And most of you probably have never heard of that. But De Re Metallica was the world's leading authority on all things metal: mining, smelting, melting, refining, all of that. De Re Metallica was published in 1556, which is, quite a long ways after the Roman Empire. But the processes that are described in it were developed during and prior to the Roman Empire. But the Roman Empire really perfected some of these things as far as, when it comes to mining and whatnot, like the process of using a water wheel to dewater the mines so that your either slaves or later employed workers wouldn't be drowning in the deep mine shafts. And all of these processes are well defined in De Re Metallica. And De Re Metallica, oddly enough, was the world's leading authority on all things metal until the late 1800s. So these processes that were developed 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, is how the world did everything up until the Industrial Revolution, which I found that extremely fascinating, because I've read De Re Metallica, albeit it's been like a decade ago, because, when I was doing mining, I mean, it was very topical when I was doing mining and treasure hunting, and finding these old mine sites from the Spaniards back when the Spanish were basically extracting all the metals out of the mountains in Colorado, and finding those old mine sites and the refining sites where they would roast and crush the ores, and and then trying to back then trying to find the trail markers to figure out where they buried it. Things like that. Anyways, De Re Metallica was a big part of how they conducted business back then. And so I've read the book and found it to be quite fascinating. And then I didn't realize it until I was doing my research into this, that that basically all the stuff that was in that book was kind of perfected by the Romans. So that's what I got. That's where I went with the early Roman Empire, was how basically they created De Re Metallica.
Right.
Another interesting fact, coming back to the mining and stuff like that, particularly you mentioned earlier about the mining in Spain and stuff like that. During the Roman period, there was a mountain in Spain that has been completely mined. It has disappeared. The Romans were the first to literally remove a mountain.
They I remember that was they used hydraulic mining. They were the first people to, I can't remember what it's called, when you redirect a river like way upstream and bring the water in at the top, and they would build ground sluices all down the side of the mountain and basically just wash the mountain down into the river, and they would build these sluices to collect all the metals. I've seen pictures of that, what used to be that mountain. But yeah, they did hydraulic mining, which of course in this day and age is now completely banned everywhere because it's so environmentally destructive.
I mean, obviously, if it can remove a mountain.
Yeah, well, and that's it. And like looking across, like I've seen pictures across the vista of where some of those mountains were. And if you've ever seen like the looking across like canyons and the mesas in New Mexico and stuff like that. Now, of course, I've never been there personally. I'm comparing pictures, of course, but it looks very similar to that. It's, these pillars that are remained, in small hills and stuff like that, with deep valleys and gorges and stuff like, and gorges and whatnot, of what they say used to be a mountain. And that is absolutely astounding, and of course, they used hydraulic mining, but the Romans also used, regular mining practices as well, being, pick and shovel and, carts and all that type of stuff. So, and just thinking, okay, they used, slave labor and whatnot, but think of the scale of, how many people would have been there doing these activities, and of course that ties back into us. You can't do this type of thing without a blacksmith, without a metalsmith making the tools, sharpening the tools, maintaining this, that, and the other, maintaining equipment. So. And there would have been towns and all sorts set up around, these mining settlements and mining camps and whatnot. So, this was a massive undertaking done by people that, until you start looking into this, or until you start hearing a podcast like this, you kind of think, oh yeah, okay, yeah, they were advanced, but they were primitive. And it's not until you start looking at this going, these weren't primitive people at all. These were highly intelligent people.
Yeah, you think like, Unga Bunga mud hut stuff, but no. You think of like ancient technologies being like extremely primitive, mindset.
Yeah.
Well,
but I mean, even
I was going to say when it comes to, for the purpose of our show, when it comes to metalwork, they were very highly advanced. I mean, like I said, I mean, we're talking about a people that like 2,500 years ago that were working, that developed the methods to work metal that lasted for 2 millennia. I mean, like their technology was the best way to do things for the next 2 millennia, and that's mind-boggling. That because you think about in our lifetime, how much has changed with just in the scope of metalwork, in the different alloys that are available these days, and things like that. And you think, well, technology changes rather quickly, and especially as it applies to us. However, these technologies that developed 2,000 years ago were so good that they lasted that long.
Yeah.
And another thing, right, is two things on that. First of all, right, we think, okay, like we look at Rome and go, that's a pretty city and stuff like that. But as we mentioned before, they had indoor plumbing and indoor sewage. People would go to the bathroom go to the loo indoors. They had running water indoors. They had this is the peoples that they basically had vending machines and takeaway shops.
They had fast food. They did.
Like the Colosseum, which is one of the most famous buildings. They had was it something like 39 exits, and it's estimated that they could go from full capacity to completely empty in an emergency in 10 minutes. That's faster than a modern stadium can be emptied nowadays, right? And second of all, another thing I want to point out is the ancient Romans also knew about the qualities and properties of coal. They didn't use charcoal. They mined and used coal. They knew what coal was good for, burning, for warmth. They knew what coal was good for smelting and blacksmithing and all that type of thing. This was a people that, like Sally said, not only with their metallurgy, the standard for 2,000 years, but these guys were highly advanced in their use of coal and stuff like that. Things that again are important to us as blacksmiths nowadays.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
There is a lot of like y'all said, the stuff that came about was invented and or perfected for its time back then. A lot of it still holds today, not just technology. This kind of segues into what my rabbit hole was. A lot of the technologies, like Philly said, lasted 2 millennia, and until we then improved on it even further. Even more so, I was digging and I found, surgical and, not medical and surgical stuff. And not just like, when I was first reading that, I'm like, oh, cool. So they figured out how to, lance a boil or stuff like that. But like kind of advanced medical, bone resetting, cosmetic surgery, uvular, clipping, like to prevent snoring.
Uvular.
uvular clipping, remove again, also lancing boils, removing tumorous growths. They recognize uh, tumorous growths, and a lot of the, like, and going in cosmetic surgery, even uncircumcision, I think would be the word, decircumcision. They reattached foreskins for cosmetic purposes. That's a whole nother rabbit hole I ain't gonna go down. I told y'all I had jokes.
Yeah.
But
Y'all mess with the dick jokes.
yeah. But like a lot of the medical tools that they created out of bronze and some steel, or well, I'll call it steel because they did use carbon, carbon migration to create stronger iron. Like, okay, so yeah, they had like different size scalpels used for different things. It wasn't just, here's my knife, give me your leg, chop, chop. They were more advanced even than the old West, where it was give them some whiskey and grab a saw, like, oh, your ankle hurts, laudanum, whiskey, saw, hack and slash. Uh, they had speculums, forceps, bone resetting tools, uh, catheters, bronze tubes, that for use for catheters. They even had using poppy, and some other stuff, like basically made like early versions of morphine, for anesthesia and local pain and stuff like that. So pretty advanced, and a lot of the tools that they used back then, that they created cast out of bronze or hammered out of steel or iron, have, you could take and set those up against modern, medical tools, primarily like the forceps and such, and speculums and really the bone resetting implements. And there are modern, you could take one of those and use it in a modern setting today. I mean, you have to clean it up first, give it a bit of polish and sanitization, but one of the interesting points for bronze and stuff is base of brass, and and it's a natural antimicrobial properties, as I'm sure with the whole past couple of years, everybody talking about brass and copper and like the all that stuff. Um, it just, they knew that, and they used that to their advantage and created some of these, what I would, looking at some of the pictures of the stuff. Let me see if I can pull them up. Um, uh, blah, 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 blah.
Speaking of pictures,
Yeah.
while you're looking that stuff up and throwing up some of that stuff, I wanted to bring up the idea for a project, or our project idea for this month. Although there's not really a time frame on it. What we challenge everybody to do is build something Roman. Okay. Or of the Roman style. Obviously, you're not going to be able to recreate soft Roman iron, or anything like that. But build something that is a Roman design, of Roman inspiration. Whether that's flatware, or maybe a cooking utensil, or a latch on a door, or hinges. A gladius. I mean, anything that would have been built during the early Roman Empire, or the early Rome. So we're looking at basically Bronze Age, but with some iron being available. Well, actually, I mean it applies to all of the Roman Empire, because it's the whole month, not just this show. So yeah, build something that's sort of Roman, and show us what you built,
And that guys, that includes like spring scissors, Jesus nails, and of course they're crucifixion nails, small cleats, cleats that go on shoes, basically anything. If you can bring up ancient Roman and then attach a word to it, and they had it then, do it in the Roman style, because at the end of the day, like, this is, again, it's a challenge. It's no competition or anything like that, but we just get something to get those creative juices flowing. If you don't already have a project on, John, I see that you say you can't. You've already been on a project. That's fine. There's no time limit. We've kind of said this month's project because we're covering ancient Rome at the moment, but
we'll get back to it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, and at the end, when we get on to looking into the next month's topic, then we're gonna show off those of you that send it into one of our Instagrams, email it to impracticalblacksmiths@gmail.com, and we'll do a little bit of a slideshow of the things that eventually got made. And we all intend on doing something over the course of the year, with these things as well. I personally, I'm inspired to make a set of Romans-esque cooking, eating utensils, cutlery, a spoon, a fork, and a knife. Because in my research and stuff like that of things to do, I realized that Roman forks are actually only 3-pronged. They look like a trident. Their spoons are a little bit, looks a bit more like a flat soup spoon. So it was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. So so there's things that I want to get into.
Yeah.
So and
so
have at it.
I'm gonna pull up these images, but I'm gonna describe, just on the screen. But for the podcast listeners, I'm gonna describe specific ones. And for the podcast listeners, I recommend just putting early Roman medical tools into a search engine and going image and just looking, because it's actually pretty amazing. Let me switch over here. But yeah, looking at this image, for example, this is all stuff that was created during, the early Roman blah, 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 speculums. Like this right here is what I was talking about, the bone resetter. This is one example of it, where it's basically a curve, a handle with a curved hook on each end. And there were images that I was seeing where these are actually, they have ridges in them as teeth. And so that you would use a scalpel, slice into the the leg of the broken area or whatever, and then using that slim tool, reach in there using forceps to kind of move things around, feel things around, and use that as a wedge to grip the bone and push it exactly where it needs to be. And then they'd splint it, sew it all back up, boom, they've got the various different probes for so many different things. And I believe the spring scissors is something that I didn't even know was that old. Cast out of bronze or forged out of iron, simple, basic spring scissors. Just amazing when you think of it. It's almost as if like all of that existed and then the world forgot about it during the Dark Ages, because even as early as 200 or 300 years ago, it was in the American history, Old West, it was drink a bottle of whiskey, use that same whiskey as general anesthesia or as a localized sanitizer or whatever, and then grab a saw and just hack the leg off. Why? Because he had a sprained ankle.
I mean,
I was going to say, it's where the term "bite the bullet" comes from, because at one stage they would do surgery, serious surgeries, without any anaesthetic, and they would put a stick or literally a lead bullet between your teeth, and you would have to bite the bullet in order for them to cut into you or cut your leg off and stuff like that. It's the reason why we say bite the bullet in order of terms of getting things done or getting something unpleasant done. So the fact that ancient Romans had anesthesiologists is amazing.
And well, here's the thing. I'm reading the chat, and they're talking about if only they'd known about microbes to prevent infections, and yikes, no anesthesia. They did have that stuff. They had a poppy seed and made a version of morphine. And no, they through their immense trial and error, I'm assuming over the long span of time, they find that using these tools, these bronze and brass tools, the infections weren't as bad, I'm sure, because those those metals have antimicrobial properties. On the screen right now is some physical examples or actual non-drawing examples of some more bone. What's the word I keep using? Setters, bone setters. You have the hooks, and if you look at them, they're different sizes, so they obviously had different. It wasn't a one size fits all tool. They made tools for different bones, for different situations, for different angles and whatnot. And this one here is a single sided one with a handle, the the bone hook piece, and various size levers attached, or fulcrums attached to them, which tells me that they knew that the human body was, every part of it was different. I mean, and yeah, you look at that with today's knowledge, and you go, or with a modern mindset, and you go, well, yeah, that's freaking obvious. But and then you remember we're talking about, what are we talking? 2,500 years ago.
Yep.
Give or take 2,500 years ago, and it's like just amazing the level of medical knowledge that they acquired, and I kind of personally, through no research, I attribute that to the massive scale of the Roman Empire and the Roman kingdoms, and in that you had, like Jack Pine said earlier, so many cultures and so much information being enveloped under one nation, one empire, and so many people, coming up with ideas and for its time being forward thinking and modern thinking. So, of course,
and to the credit of the Roman Empire, so whatever, Rome, they had the foresight to know that as they went forth and conquered the world, that in every area they went, people were going to be really good at something. They're going to have something that they do better than everybody else, and they knew to not just like conquer a people, eradicate them, and take their land. They knew to incorporate those people into the empire and incorporate their technologies and their knowledge base. And also to improve upon that with what they've gotten from other people. And so it's their philosophy was, let's all do better. Let's all work together and improve. And that was the farthest reaches of the Roman Empire. That was kind of the idea, was like, hey, if we all work together, we can all do better. And
on a more social note. On a more social note, topical to what I was talking about, bringing back the dick jokes. Funny enough, with them enveloping, not conquering, but conquering and enveloping and absorbing different cultures and different peoples and lands, the most common surgery performed was the cosmetic surgery of I said it before, decircumcisions, reattaching foreskins. and it wasn't a health thing. It was purely cosmetic because, you know, the bathhouses back then was like an elitist social, you know, gathering, and it was a social status to visit the bathhouses and this, that, and the other thing. And it, you know, if you were of a culture that was enveloped, or you know, brought in, and you were an aristocrat of a town that was conquered and brought into the aristocracy of the Roman Empire, you didn't want to be easily pointed out as an outsider, you know, like, so you get those surgeries, you know, you get these cosmetic surgeries to make yourself look more Roman, where I'm assuming the term "when in Rome, do as the Romans" comes from. You know, as silly of a train of thought that is, you know, it's the social implications, uh, for what Sully just said is so far-reaching, both in all these topics. You know, like when you're enveloped into a society that is, you know, more advanced than yours, you want to take that, learn that, be that, and spread that to others. Because if it is a superior way, you know, the Roman Empire
And
really pushed a lot of that.
and that's to show you got, it's like a lot of people don't realize that modern cosmetic surgery, the way we know it, you know, and reattaching or skin grafts and all that type of stuff, didn't happen in Western society. We didn't have the level of technology to be able to do that until the Second World War onwards. We'd started kind of doing it around the First World War, right? So, you know, 1915 onwards, but we didn't really have this successful process of doing this type of thing until the 1940s, 1950s. So to put that in perspective, the ancient Romans had a level of surgery that was equivalent to the 1950s.
Yeah.
Right? Not only that, they were also forward, you know, forward in a modern sense, in the sense of they had silphium, which was a birth control.
Yeah.
So they had they had birth control, you know, and ways of, and okay, it's an extinct species now because they used it so much they sent it extinct. But you know, they had birth control in ancient Rome. So you know, these are things that, you know, and I noticed Eric made a comment in the chat about, you know, how far away they were from Industrial Revolution. So to wrap up this topic, that is actually something we're going to cover in a couple of weeks with the fall of Rome. So, guys, I suggest that if you are watching and you aren't a regular watcher and you're perhaps listening to this later on in Spotify or on our podcasts, wherever you find our podcast, you know, stay tuned. That episode is coming out, and we've already discussed it. We've already got plans for it. It is amazing. But yeah, so this is just to give you a touch in on some of those ideas, and yeah, so the fall of Rome and our steam from here, another little hint is actually going to be rather cool, and our conversations are a little bit more less structured than this. We're going to be a lot more conversational. This was kind of introducing the topic and the first actual episode of our new format, so to speak. Not really new format, but a new topic source and how we're going moving forward this year. So it's a little bit less, you know, a little bit more structured this time. But yeah, as we get a little bit more of a handle of it, we'll get a little bit easier, a little bit more flowy. But yeah, so it's going to be rather cool this year. Some of the conversations we're going to have.
I'm excited.
I like to call where we're going mostly with the next episode is going to be historical speculation.
Yeah. No, not the next episode. Wait.
No. I mean the next one like this, 2 weeks out.
Yeah, pretty much. So you guys know, tune in for these because it's a lot of fun information. The entire year isn't going to be the Roman Empire. We've discussed doing, you know, Egyptians. I really want to talk Maui, you know, the Easter Island heads, for example, and the
So you're talking about Mali, like, you know, like MDMA.
Yeah, you know, Polynesian island stuff. where they didn't have access to a ton of metals, and the speculative work there for what if they did, but I'm very excited. And Jack Pines, you were asking about the Dark Ages, assuming that we'll touch on it. I'm sure we will.
We've also got the Olmecs and South and Central American civilizations. We're
and the
going to be talking about
Aziz Aluzi Indians, Anazizis,
the Aztecs, and possibly we might even get into the Pueblos, the Anasazi and the Mesa Verde occupation.
Speaking of
which is honestly, that's what this coffee cup is. That is Anasazi. That is Anasazi pottery work. So I mean, it's not. This is a souvenir from the Chaco ruins of the Anasazi Indians. But I mean, I got this as a souvenir in the gift shop. But that's the way they would have made a cup 800 years ago there. So
speaking of which, did you look up that book that I recommended there, Alex?
Which book?
Thunderhead?
Oh no, I did not.
Okay.
I will.
Anyway,
I'll read it tomorrow.
I'm sure you will.
So we've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up this year, guys. We're really looking forward to it. We've already spent upwards of, just in the last week and 2 weeks, we've already spent upwards of about 15 hours just talking about what we're doing this year, and catching up and bagging each other out about not recording and like and just going over and getting in really heated discussions about ancient aliens and
no. Okay, now you're getting heated about ancient aliens. You're getting heated. I brought up Atlantis. Okay, if I may defend my honor here. Okay, well, yes, I am known as the jokester of the show. We were discussing ancient Egypt, and it's like I went down this rabbit hole, and I found Atlantis. Okay, I found it. Nobody else. I found it. It's in the eye of the Sahara in the Rashat region. And I brought that up in our discussions, and immediately, Adam's blood pressure, he started bleeding from the ears, and smoke started coming. And he went off on a tirade about how, no, we are not talking about ancient aliens, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I didn't bring up anything about aliens. And I'm trying to explain and intelligently portray my perspective that, and it's like, no, he threw a fit. And it's like, yeah, no, we're going to avoid going down the rabbit hole of the alien truths. And we're going to stick with terrestrial. I see you side-eyeing me. We're going to stick with terrestrial explanations and speculations. Okay, so there's that. Now, unless any of you in the chat or any of our listeners come across any concrete proof and evidence that ancient aliens helped, with our ancient civilizations, then you can send them to Impractical Blacksmiths at gmail.com. Go ahead and send us all the alien proof that you possibly can find, as long as it's real proof. Okay. And our historical curator Adam will sift through all of that information.
Probably have a heart attack or a stroke. But on that note, at some stage this year, and I've already discussed it with Yamas and Sully, we probably will have a discussion or an episode on legendary civilizations and legendary things. So civilization like Atlantis, and there's one or the lost city of gold in the South Americas,
Eldorado.
And El Dorado and all that type of thing. So we're going to have a conversation at some point in this year.
The seven cities of Cibola.
Yeah. And so we're going to have a conversation about these civilizations at some stage this year, and I will try and keep my blood pressure down, because I want people to know I am not a skeptic about Atlantis or anything like that. Pliny the Elder and a lot of other historical and not so much contemporary, but closer to the period writers wrote about civilizations like this. The thing that always gets on my goat is people put them into that they are an advanced civilization that suddenly disappeared. The way I envisage it is these civilizations are historically plausible. We don't have any proof they were actually around, but they are plausible, could have existed.
I do.
On that note, shush, Yamas. On that note, I'm talking to our viewers and subscribers here. On that note, whilst they're historically plausible, we don't have any proof that they existed. At best, you've got to realize that these were accounts written by people that, at the time that they were living, were early Bronze Age, late Copper Age, perhaps even Stone Age recollections. So if they had a civilization that was end of Bronze Age to start of Iron Age level in technology, they would have been considered by those contemporary people as really advanced. To our standards, they would have been still early Stone Age or late Bronze Age. They're not advanced to us, and that's the thing that kind of drives me wild and really pushes up my blood pressure. But also, and then the next thing is when we see technologies that we can't quite comprehend or figure out now how they did them. These people, and as we've discussed tonight and today about the ancient Romans, these people were exceptionally intelligent, just as intelligent and just as advanced as we are now. Okay, they didn't have electricity, but most of the world didn't have electricity until 100 years ago. This is a relatively new technology. So, there's some people out there that put down advancements in technology to aliens, and that's kind of like that subtracts from the human ability and the human mind, and we are wonderful, wonderful beings as we are, and really intelligent. If you look at some of the stuff you guys make with your hands, it's and Yamez knows, and I know Yamez isn't an ancient aliens believer. We've had hours of conversations about this now. That doesn't discount the fact that there might be aliens out there. Don't get me wrong. It's a big universe. There's a hell of a lot of space out there for nothing to actually exist apart from us. But Yamez likes to stir me up a bit, and that's the reason why I pulled the joke about ancient aliens before, because after all the times he's needled at me the last couple of weeks, I got him back. It was beautiful.
You mentioned Pliny the Elder. A lot of what we know about the ancient Roman and how they did things back then was from the writings of, I think it basically loosely translates to the History of Nature, written by Pliny the Elder, but published by his son, Pliny the Younger, because Pliny the Elder was killed in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius before he could publish it. So I actually went down that rabbit hole for a good 2 hours earlier in the week. So
yeah.
And that's it. So we will have a conversation about theoretical civilizations and stuff like that later on in the year, after we get out of some of the really juicy and really cool civilizations that we've already got loosely planned. So yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it for today, isn't it, guys?
I believe so. Because what we're going to go through, I mean, I'll just plan out this month. Next week we're going to be talking about early iron as it applies to iron the way the Romans used it, and their various iterations of iron and steel, which can be different from what we're really used to. So we're going to talk about Roman iron. And then the week after that will be the three of us again, where we're going to discuss the late Roman Empire, the fall of Rome. And that's going to be a juicy one. And then the week after that is up in the air.
we have an idea for the topic, but it's contingent on a couple of other
Yep.
things.
Yep.
I say we
So,
just go ahead and do it. But
No, well, let's stick to the plan. Stick to
Sure.
the plan and just wait.
so
So
yeah,
as I was gonna say, as my final thoughts, guys, I hope that our conversation tonight kind of inspired you to, get out and try something new, try something old. Look up something that happened, thousands of years ago. We're in a hobby or a profession or whatever you want to call it, an art that nothing is new. Someone's done it, thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago or a couple of decades ago. There's a way. There's pretty much whatever you want to do. There's a way to get it done. So try something new. Challenge yourself. Look at if you don't have anything to do right now, don't have a project on, look up ancient Roman whatever and have a go. Why not? You got nothing to lose. If it either turns out all right or it turns out looking primitive, either way it's a win. So yeah, have a go, and I really, really hope you enjoyed hearing what we had discussed tonight, as much as I've had fun discussing it. And I really hope you stick around for the next couple of episodes, particularly with the fall of the Roman Empire, because that is going to be a doozy of an episode.
doozy.
Yeah.
A doozy.
Along that same thoughts, I mean, I totally agree. Where we're going with the next episode is going to blow your mind. But all in all, though, I hope you guys enjoy what we're doing here with this altered format, so to speak. I know, history is not necessarily everybody's bag, but in this respect, I think it just brings a little bit more depth, so to speak, to what we usually talk about. A little bit more color, I guess you could say, because you don't really, you watched an episode of FIF and you're like, oh, today you're making the Roman gladius, and then they give you a brief history of how it was used and when it was used or whatever. Well, they don't really go into, like how, what alloy it was and where that alloy was probably mined or anything like that. And then, they wind up making it out of 15N20 and 1080 or something like that. And it's like, well, they didn't have that in Rome, but okay, whatever. So this is going to be, this year is going to be more of a kind of like a historical look at ironwork and trying to, or metalwork, I should say, not ironwork, metalwork, and trying to, at various points in time, recreate what they made, not necessarily exactly what they made, but how they may have done it and what it may have looked like, things like that. And I know I'm super excited to tackle some of these projects myself. I do have a few things. I mean, like, I'm not going to make something for every civilization we do, but I do have a couple projects in mind, and I'm like, that's going to be fun. And, and whether it works or not, I don't know. I mean, like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to video it and take pictures, even if I fail miserably and wind up trying to cast something and blow it up. We're going to go with it. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to have fun making stuff. So I hope you guys get involved. I hope you guys try to make something that that applies to this civilization or the next one that we talk about, or the one, find something that inspires you that we talk about, and go, yeah, I think I'm going to make a Roman spoon. Or, well, they had indoor plumbing, so maybe they had toilet spoons. So with that, I want you guys to have a great week. Think about Roman history and what you might be able to build that they may have had in Rome. And I'll see you next week for Roman Iron.
Yeah. And as for my final thoughts, my usual always applies. Love, big thanks to you, the community, to all the members in the chat, and to all of you guys who support this channel and this endeavor that we do. Huge thank you to my co-hosts, Alex and Adam. who without which I would be lost. Yeah, I can't just repeat what everybody already said, but I can because it's my show. No, it's our show. I'm like super excited for this. I may just be a jokester, but these guys are helping me learn how to research again. It's a skill. It's a skill to drown out the noise of what doesn't matter and focus on something that you're trying to learn specifically. Um, my brain has hurt more this week than it has in years. So, really looking forward for that specific exercise.
Well, so guys, thanks for joining us. You can find Yamez on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. You can find Alex at Trended Alarm Studios on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can find me, Adam, at Speargrass Forge on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget, if you have any suggestions for Tool of the Week, Metal of the Week, or now Civilization of the Month, you can leave it under the hashtag Metal of the Week on the YouTube community chat in Discord, or you can email us at impracticalblacksmith@gmail.com. If you found us on Anchor, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else you can find good quality podcasts, we upload every Wednesday, or you can join us live every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's currently 12:30 p.m. 12:30 a.m. Australian Central Standard Time. But check that against your local time to be more accurate. And that's at Island Metal Forge YouTube channel. Finally, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to what's on the podcast, don't forget to leave us a star rating. We really appreciate your support. And we do this because we love the information, we love blacksmithing, and we love you guys. So on that note, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Peace out, everybody. All right. And I'm sitting there